My name's Tim Fisher. Today I'm going to show you a simple way of painting trees just with a couple of brushes. The brushes out there in the watercolour world are quite bewildering. There are all sorts of different brushes, flat brushes, round brushes, deerfoot stipplers, you name it, they're out there. You don't need that many brushes to do a watercolour painting, and I've developed quite a simple technique for painting trees in full leaf, just using one or two round nylon brushes. Now the brushes I use are very similar to the Stratford & York and the Pro League, but it's one I've had designed myself because I want to get the optimum in the shape of the tip. And I've come up with these two brushes here, and I'm going to paint most of the painting with the larger brush and then the rest of the painting with the smaller one. Now, to paint trees in full leaf, I have a certain technique, and what I do, I call it the violin hold because it's a bit like playing the bow on the violin, but I hold the brush from the top here and then I can drag it over the surface to apply the paint. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a few simple colours. I'm just going to use a yellow, a blue and a red to paint a tree in a field with some corn in the background. So follow me as I take the technique through step by step. Generally when I paint a tree in full leaf, I like to start from the top and work my way downwards. I don't know why I do this, but it just seems to work for this technique. By using the side of the brush, we can scrape it over the surface, and what we want to do, we want to try and leave lots of sky holes, so that's why I've developed this particular way of doing it. What I'm doing at the moment, I'm using a mixture of colours. I'm using a mixture of phthalo blue and Sennelier yellow. These two colours just mix very gently, give this lovely blue-green effect. The surface I'm working on is Bockingford. It's 140 pounds in weight, and it's a knot surface. If you try a rough surface, you'll probably find you'll get even more textural effects, but I find that a knot surface seems to work perfectly well for this type of technique. The paper itself is at an angle of about 30 degrees, so we've got gravity helping us as well. That's helping the paint to fall to the bottom of the painting. Now while this is still wet, what I'm doing, I'm picking up stronger mixes of the colours and feeding those in. And I'm using a bit of a cloud spotting technique, so I'm trying to imagine where I can see branches and gaps, and then I'm going with that imagination and just adding in more dark into those areas just to create a more realistic tree-like effect. So watch me now as I just finish the first stage of painting the tree. This is directly onto dry plain paper. I haven't wetted the paper at all, and I'm using my big brush. This is the number 16 brush. See, I'm spending quite a bit of time working on the tree. It does stay wet for quite a while. There will be areas that are drying, but you tend to get a bit of a back run going on there, so you're getting additional textural effects just by the fact that some of the paint is nearly dry and some of it's quite wet. What I'm also doing, gradually making the tree greener. I'm leaving some of the more bluey colour as the background tree, and this gives more of a three-dimensional effect to the tree. It gives it much more of a feeling of volume. And as watercolour paint tends to dry lighter, I'm going to go in quite strong with the pigment. So these last blobs of pigment, they're quite strongly mixed. To finish off, just a few little tiny dots around the edge just to suggest leaves that, although they're joined to the tree, if we just do them as dots, it just gives the impression there are very, very fine branches connected to them. That's the main tree finished. What I'm doing now, I'm mixing up French ultramarine blue, and I'm going to do a graded wash over the top of the entire painting. Now, you must make sure that the tree you've painted is absolutely dry, and what I'm doing now, I'm adding more water to the blue, so it's going to dilute it down as I work down the paper. I've got to work with the brush absolutely flooded. If the brush is too dry, it'll start to pick up the paint underneath. Now, as you watch, you will see it has picked up a little bit, but I wanted that to happen. What I want is to give the tree a feeling of atmosphere, a feeling that it's sitting in this sort of foggy, misty field, and that's working quite well. I've changed quickly to yellow ochre for the base, and now I'm just lifting out some fog in the distance, just with a very dry brush, so the brush is sucking paint off the surface. Now, before the surface is absolutely dry, I've mixed a bit of quinacridone red into the French ultramarine blue to give a mauvey colour, and I'm just flicking that in very gently. That should bleed and run nicely and just give the impression of a distant tree line. I drag the brush downwards, and I'm deliberately leaving sky holes again, so those vertical strokes will give the impression of trunks, and then the gaps, obviously the space between the trees. Again, just lifting out at the base with a dry brush, just so that the fog rises into the distant trees. Now I've picked up the small brush, the size 8, and I'm going to put in some fine detail. I've painted in a fence, and I've just put in 1 or 2 fine twigs. Now, because I've brushed over the surface of the tree, it's lifted some of the paint, so I'm going back in now with some stronger paint just to add back some of the shadows and tones to the base of the tree. I'm not going to paint over the entire tree, just select 1 or 2 areas so that we've still got a misty effect round the edge of the tree. I'm also on the right just going to paint a fallen branch. I think we just need something in that space, so I'm going in with quite a strong pigment just to show this branch sitting against the side of the tree. Now just finishing off now, just adding 1 or 2 darts here and there into the tree. You generally find that the branches that you can see through the sky holes are actually quite dark, so I'm just reinforcing the tone there. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of dark at the base of the tree. If you observe trees, you'll see that phenomena tends to happen a lot. Well, there you have it. That's a nice simple way of painting a big tree in the middle of a field with some nice misty trees in the background. And with a bit of practice you should start to end up with something like this. What I would say is that if you are interested in doing trees, you need to go out there and actually look at trees. Just look at the form, the shape they take, and then when you get into your studio and start painting, you'll be able to render them quite convincingly using this technique. Well, thanks for watching, and happy painting.